More than $30 billion just landed on 1,400 acres of rural Georgia. In the exact stretch of days the internet decided the AI boom had finally burned out. No blockbuster launch, no viral demo, no midnight keynote to point to. Just a flat, eerie quiet, and half your feed already writing the obituary. But that money is real, it's committed, and it's only one number in a week that looked fast asleep and was anything but. Before I show you where all of it went, you need to see what everyone mistook that silence for. Every technology cycle runs on two layers, and that split explains everything that follows. There's the demand layer, the apps, the chatbots, the flashy launches you actually see. And there's the supply layer, the chips, the power, the data centers, the money plumbing you never do. When a cycle matures, the loud part goes quiet and the expensive part gets louder. That's not a slowdown. That's a boom moving underground, out of your feed and into the ground itself. On the surface, it really does look calm. No GPT moment broke the internet this week. No launch trended for 3 days straight. The most talked about model news was almost boring. A 4 billion parameter vision model for edge devices, tuned to run on a single desk. Useful, incremental, forgettable. If your only signal is what tops the trending page, you'd swear the engine idled. You'd be staring at exactly the wrong dashboard. Even the stock tape fed the story. Nvidia spent last week flirting with $200 a share, down from a high of $236 before earnings, and the bears smelled blood. Then Wednesday it clawed back more than 3%, toward $215. To a casual watcher, that's a wobble in a tiring trade. But price is the last thing to move, and the most misleading. Under that flat tape, something enormous was being signed. Start with what OpenAI did on Wednesday, because it barely made headlines. It launched Presence, not a chatbot, but a platform for planting AI agents deep inside a company's own systems, wired into its data, its rules, its permissions. And the early adopters aren't scrappy startups. They're BBVA, one of Europe's biggest banks, SoftBank in Japan, and the airline group behind British Airways. This isn't a toy for your phone. It's software being bolted into the core of institutions that move billions. Notice what's not in that sentence. No consumer buzz, no free demo you can play with tonight. OpenAI even sells it like a consulting firm, boots on the ground, deployed for you rather than downloaded by you. That's the tell. The company that gave the world a viral chatbot is now quietly chasing the least glamorous money there is. Enterprise contracts, the kind that don't trend but do renew year after year, at prices ordinary users never see. But the product is the small story here. The bigger one is how it's all being paid for, and here's where it gets genuinely strange. Nvidia, a chip company sitting on a mountain of cash, has started acting like a bank. It's building financing structures to help smaller cloud providers buy its own GPUs. In one case, it's backing roughly $500 million for a provider called GMI Cloud, agreeing to absorb the losses if customers default, in exchange for a slice of the revenue. Think about what that means. Traditional lenders got nervous about pouring money into these so-called neocloud startups, worried the AI demand might not last. So Nvidia stepped into the gap and underwrote the risk itself. It's selling the shovels, and quietly guaranteeing the loans people used to buy them. When the supplier will eat customer defaults just to keep the chips moving, that is not a company that thinks the party is ending. That's conviction, written in cash. None of that trends. There's no keynote for a revenue share agreement, no confetti for a loan guarantee. But this is the machinery of a boom. The unglamorous plumbing that decides whether the flashy stuff on top can even exist. And here's the thing about plumbing. You only hear it when it breaks. Right now it's not breaking. It's being expanded, aggressively, in the exact week everyone decided the story was over. Now look at what those loans are actually buying. They're buying this. Nvidia just detailed Vera Rubin, its next computing platform, the successor to the Blackwell chips currently powering the AI world. 2 GPUs for every CPU liquid-cooled, with hot swappable parts, and a big jump in the one metric that now rules everything. Tokens per what? How much AI you get per unit of power. And the early customer list reads like a who's who. Microsoft, Oracle, Google Cloud, OpenAI, CoreWeave, and Europe's Mistral. Everyone who called the top is still standing in line to buy. Then there's the part almost nobody wrote about. Nvidia also rolled out Spectrum 6, a networking switch that moves 102 terabits of data every single second, double the previous generation. That number stays abstract until you hear its job. To wire together hundreds of thousands of GPUs, so they behave like one gigantic brain. You don't build plumbing that big for a market you think is peaking. You build it for one you expect to outgrow everything standing today. And the demand is reaching places you wouldn't expect. On Wednesday, Nvidia's chief executive personally switched on one of the company's most powerful systems. Not at some hyperscaler, but at a U.S. Navy graduate school in Monterey, California. And over in Japan, a venture called Notra is lining up 27,500 of Nvidia's next-gen Rubin chips, so the country's manufacturers can stop renting American cloud and own the compute outright. Quite weak? The map is filling in everywhere at once. Here's the clearest sign these chips are the most wanted objects on Earth. This week, a top White House technology official accused a Chinese AI lab of getting its hands on restricted Nvidia GB300 chips, routed, allegedly, through Thailand to slip past U.S. export bans. Set the politics aside, and just look at the economics. Nobody smuggles something nobody wants. When governments are drawing borders around your product and people are sneaking it across them, the AI boom is cooling becomes a very hard case to make. Which brings us to the loudest thing that happened all week. The thing that never trended. Remember that number I promised you? OpenAI unveiled Project Camellia, a data center campus in Effingham County, Georgia, on 1,400 acres of rural land. Not a lab. Not an office. A single computing site the size of a small town, built for one purpose: to run and train the next generation of AI. And the price tag is where this stops being abstract and starts being staggering. Reported spending on that one campus tops $30 billion. Its appetite for power is 3.2 gigawatts. Enough electricity to light up a mid-sized city, aimed instead at silicon. OpenAI is even pledging to fund the grid upgrades needed to feed it, phasing that power in from 2028 all the way to 2032. Read that timeline again. You do not commit to a build that finishes in 2032 if you believe the demand dies in 2026. This is a bet on an entire decade. And the details give away just how serious this is. OpenAI is throwing in $80 million of community benefits, plus $71 million in software credits for Georgia students, just to smooth its way in. Put $30 billion in perspective. That's more than some entire countries spend on their military in a year, poured into one campus, in one county, that most Americans will never once drive past. That's not a company tiptoeing. That's a company stomping. So line it all up. Enterprise agents going live inside global banks. A chip maker underwriting its own customers' loans. A next-gen platform everyone's already queuing for. Networking built for 1 million chips at once. A $30 billion campus rising out of rural Georgia. Every one of those landed in the same stretch of days the internet spent declaring AI boring. The demand layer went quiet. The supply layer went to war. And the second one is the tell that actually matters. Here's the reframe worth keeping. Silence in tech is almost never the sound of something dying. Very often, it's the sound of a boom growing too big and too expensive to fit on your screen. The early phase is loud because it's cheap. A demo costs nothing to share. The serious phase is quiet because it's costly. You can't tweet out a power substation or a $30 billion concrete pour. What looks like calm is just the price of admission going up. So the next time your feed tells you AI went quiet, remember where the noise actually moved, not gone relocated. From launch pages into land deals, from viral clips into gigawatts, from your screen into the ground under a small Georgia county, where more than $30 billion just quietly went to work. That was the number I promised you. The quiet isn't the story ending. It's the story getting too heavy to lift, and the machine underneath has never once run louder. That's the story. If you'd watch one more like this, hit subscribe and I'll have another ready soon.